Welcome to Habits of Influence, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly side of entrepreneurship and building a movement to where you become the person others wish to follow. Today, we have Megan Nolan with us, who is a vitality coach and a new author of the book called The Warrior's Journey. Megan, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. I'm super excited to hear about your book. So why don't we just jump off with that start? New author, new book coming. Would love to hear about that, the inspiration behind it, and a little bit about what the book's about.
Cool. Yes. Thank you. And it actually works well because it is a really great introduction to me and my entrepreneurial journey. And so starts off with a situation that maybe you can relate to, and if not, hopefully you'll never be in it. But I found myself in that place of being completely exhausted, burnt out, questioning everything, in the spiral of doubt and confusion, and wondering if I really, quote unquote, had what it took to be an entrepreneur, if I was ever going to make it. Maybe there was something fatally wrong with me because it couldn't be this hard, but it felt like it was. And so was in that state of complete, utter anxiety and depression and confusion and doubt. And as I laid there, completely flat out, super tired. Of course, my head was spinning all of these stories of, oh, some kind of personal trainer you are, good yoga instructor you are. All you do is lay there. You're not even doing anything. And so, of course, it was a challenging situation. And so there I am, and I'm laying out on my patio, quote unquote, doing yoga, but just laying there and crying. And I'm watching a leaf that was caught on a spider web, and it was just spinning in circles. And I was watching it thinking, that's exactly what I feel like. I feel like I'm going in every different direction. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm barely hanging on by a thread. And in that moment of complete exhaustion and surrender, I finally got so quiet that I heard the voice of my heart, which said, this isn't your path. There's more for you. You're a warrior. You'll find the way. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but it's got to be better than this because this ain't working and I don't want to play this game anymore. And so I decided to reintroduce myself to the warriors that I knew from the yoga practice. And so if you've done yoga, you've probably been in one or maybe all three of the warrior poses. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there's actually an ancient story behind the poses that is a metaphor for the journey that we're all on, of having a mission in your heart, being called forward to go on a journey, and along the way, learn things, go through challenges, go to battle with the most challenging of all opponents, your own mind. And that's what the story is about. And that's what yoga ultimately is about. And that's what the book is about. And it's told through the lens of that warrior story, as well as my story, helping you to remember that there's certain things that need to happen, that get to happen internally, for you to be able to go out and live your mission and bring your big vision to life. And a lot of the times, these are things that people don't talk about, right? We hear like success is an inside job. What does that mean? I don't really know, and so it helps you to have the tools to create the inner shifts that are needed to see the outer results. So basically, I wrote the book that I wish I had had at that moment.
Which is absolutely awesome and a great segue into what we're going to talk about, because we do like to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think so many times as entrepreneurs, we get to that point where we feel stuck. Like you mentioned the spider web, and that also, even though that wasn't the foundation of the book or what you talked about, a lot of times it's like being caught in a web, like where there's so many different things we're juggling and don't know which direction to go, and we get stuck. And sometimes it's easy to want to, just like you said, be at that point where you want to give up, you want to throw in the towel, you want to just say, I am done. And then you mentioned something else where you said, we get to have this shift, we get the opportunity to do these different things. And that alone is such a great mindset, because that's how I feel too, is, even our struggles that we go through, they're opportunities for learning, they're opportunities for growth. And we have this opportunity every day to make a choice. And the choice on how we think, how we treat our body, how we treat our mind, how we treat our people. There's certain things that we are in our control, certain things that are not in our control. So that's great. And you are a vitality coach. So would you be willing to tell a little bit about maybe what got you started in that? What got you interested in helping people on their health and wellness journey, and maybe some of the things that you went through to get you to where you are with that path?
For sure. So I've always loved exercise and dance and gymnastics. And so I've been doing that my whole life. And so it's always been part of my life and something that I enjoy. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to quote unquote do with my life or do with myself. And my parents were adamant that I would go to university. And so I sort of was mandated to go. And I studied gerontology, which is the study of aging. And it was okay, but it wasn't for me. I graduated, and I was like, I just don't think I can do this whole retirement home facility, nursing home facility. I'm a really sensitive, empathetic person. And I realized that the main takeaway that I got from the study of aging from a sociological and psychological and somewhat of a biological perspective is that the healthier we are through the course of our life, the more we can live our purpose and live fully and enjoy our life over the duration of our lifespan. And so one of the main things that was constantly talked about was exercise and movement, and how it's basically the fountain of youth and lowers our stress, boosts our immune system, all of that great stuff. And so after I graduated from university, much to my parents' confusion, I decided to move out to the middle of the ocean, move to Hawaii, and become a personal trainer. And so take a more preventative approach to aging and living well. And so it, in a sense, it is still gerontology. Like I didn't have to do too much convincing, to make my parents feel like I was quote unquote using my degree. But that was the first jump into it. And so I've been an entrepreneur for almost 18 years. I've never really worked for anyone else. I mean, as a personal trainer, I've worked at gyms, but mostly as an independent contractor. And so did that for about 5 years, and then decided to do yoga teacher training because I wanted to complement the work that I was doing with my love of the yoga practice. And so everything that I do is based around energy or vitality, right? And so it is health coaching in a sense, but it is how can you take care of yourself, your mind, your body, your spirit, ideally all at once, because we don't have all day, but in a way that nurtures your energy, your vitality. And so I used to not really have a niche per se and would help anyone that wanted to integrate these tools. But over the last few years, and of course we all had our major pivot in 2020, I shifted online out of necessity, but realized before that I was working with a lot of businesses here on Maui and, teaching yoga inside the power plants and fun stuff like that. But when I shifted online, I recognized that as a population, I believe entrepreneurs are first and foremost, we're amazing and we're special. As a population, we are very driven. We are very inspired. We are change makers. We are creating, each of us has a movement, I believe. And that goes back to the warrior story of like having that mission and soul purpose. And so we have that calling in our heart. And sometimes that can drive us to be very passionate and very driven and hard for us to slow down and do the things that we need to do, like, take care of the meat sack that you get to inhabit, AKA your body. And so really bringing these tools to people, to a population that need it for the intent of you having the foundation to be successful and be impactful. That's one. But the second layer that goes a little deeper, that's really close to my heart, is that as a population, entrepreneurs are pretty consistently, usually on average about 72%, known to be challenged by depression, anxiety, bipolar, ADD, ADHD. And so as a community, because we're so creative and so inspired, there's often a flip side to that. And so because those are near and dear to my heart, as they have been challenges that I have gone through, using the tools of exercise and yoga and mental fitness to keep you healthy and happy will support you as an entrepreneur, but also support you as a human that may have those challenges. So for me, it's been this sort of, I guess my dharma in a sense that everything that I have gone through, and as you said, everything that I've gone through has helped me to learn and grow as a person, but then it helps me to give back because I'm very passionate about it, because I get it. And so for me, it feels like sort of this natural progression to continue to share and support entrepreneurs.
And it's so interesting because you touched on the health aspect of the exercising and those types of things that so many of us don't do. And it's not because we don't want to do them or we think it's not important, but we get so wrapped up in the daily routine of what needs to be done. And there's so much, and there's always more, and you have to get this and you have to get that done, that we lose sight of the importance. And I don't remember the quote, but it was something along the lines of, if you don't take the time now to take care of yourself, later on, you're going to have to, kind of one of
Yeah.
those type of deals. And I know for myself, when I exercise consistently, you have more energy. And that's, I think we get in this rut of, oh, I don't have the energy to exercise, I'll just do it tomorrow. And the do it tomorrow never comes. We all know that. The putting it off to the next day never comes. And we get in this cycle. So the less we exercise, the less energy we have, the less motivation we have, and vice versa. So when you start that cycle of exercising and taking care of yourself, eating right, all of a sudden you start to have more energy, more vitality. And then we start this whole progression of being healthier. And when we're healthier, our mind is healthier, our body's healthier, our spirit's healthier, we're happier people. Because, when you exercise, it boosts all your endorphins and all the, big words that I don't know how to pronounce. So,
All good. No, you're spot on.
so it's really funny the way our minds work. And I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but the whole mindset of keeping our mind healthy and what we tell ourselves, because so many of us as entrepreneurs, we do get into that whole realm of the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And that's damaging to us on multiple levels.
100%. And that's why, as I mentioned, that's the essence of that journey that the warrior's on, and that we're all on as individuals. And that is it's our most challenging opponent. And that's why when I work with people, I help them to create what I call a purposeful powerhouse practice. And so tapping into your power, showing up for yourself on purpose so that you can show up as your purposeful powerhouse CEO self, not the worn out entrepreneur, which we can easily get into, but the purposeful powerhouse CEO. And one of the tenets of that, one of the pillars of that, is learning to think on purpose, learning to use your mind as a powerful tool. Because let's be real, and you've probably heard, and I'm sure many people can spout the same numbers, but on average, 60 to 70,000 thoughts every day, most of which we had yesterday, most of which are negative. And that's hardwired, biologically hardwired for your survival, right? And so that negative committee in your head that's trying to keep you safe in your zone of familiarity, that will sabotage your progress and is, wants to protect you because he doesn't want you to get laughed at, doesn't want you to get hurt, all those things. But all the things that we do as entrepreneurs are potentially risky to the brain, right? Because they're unfamiliar, and especially when you're going to launch a new product into the world. Well, your brain will start to do everything in its power to prevent you from doing that, because it wants you to be where you are, stay safe. It's unfamiliar, it's unknown, it doesn't want you anywhere near that, right? And so that negative collective, which is just going to talk a lot of smack, make you feel kind of crappy because of all the nonsense that it's spouting, and doesn't really do much other than what I just said. I call it the shitty committee because that's what it's doing. It just makes you feel like shit. It talks shit, doesn't do shit. And that's what it does, but that's hardwired into your brain. And that's the essence of the yoga, and that's the essence of the book and the journey that we're all on. But the other side of that is, how can you prioritize how you feel so that you're living from your center, so that you live from that inner guidance, your inner wisdom, your heart, whatever, your soul, whatever you want to call it, so that you're living from that place. So when you're getting hijacked or sabotaging yourself, and you're like, oh, there we go again. Oh, that's my perfectionism at its finest. Oh, my overworking. Oh, there you are. And recognizing that about yourself, and be kind, be playful, right? Because no good in cracking the whip on it. It's just, that's a waste of energy. But seeing it as an opportunity to cultivate more awareness, have that growth mindset of everything is an opportunity or a gift, and just continually coming back. And literally, like, we're talking, on average, every couple seconds, you're probably going to need to do that. Like,
Yeah.
it's real.
I don't remember who it was, but there was somebody, I remember doing this a few years ago, and it was really difficult. It was called the 7-day mental diet. I don't know if you've heard of that, but you have to try to go 7 days without having a negative thought go through your mind. And if you do have a negative thought and you hold on to that thought for more than 5 seconds, you have to start over on day one.
Oh, whoa.
It is absolutely brutal. It is so difficult because even if it's just something simple, but I tend to be a very positive person, and I struggle. I was like, it took to get through 3 days. I was like, man, I can't believe I just said, I can't believe this. I can't. That's a negative thought. And you go in this
Wow.
cycle. It was pretty fun and challenging, and very, very, very insightful to how our mind really does think and how many thoughts we do tell ourselves on a day. Are you familiar at all with Joe Dispenza?
Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, I love a lot of his work where he talks about,
Me too.
rewiring our brain, the way, telling our story and creating the life we want. So going off of that, you seem to be at a really good spot right now with, where you're at with mindset and everything. And I know earlier you said you wrote this book because it's what you wish you had 17 years ago. So
Mhm.
would you be willing to share maybe some of the struggles or lessons that you learned along the way, or some of the things that you feel are really important for young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs or even existing entrepreneurs to know? Maybe sharing a struggle that you went through or something you had to overcome, and then maybe a couple tips and tricks for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think one of the things, that's interesting that we learn a lot in school, but there's a lot we didn't learn. And one of them is emotional awareness and learning to become more aware of your internal emotional state. And when I began to recognize that part of the reason that I was feeling so sad a lot was because I was speaking horribly to myself. Like I would speak in ways that I would never even want to even say, or I would never say to anybody else. And no wonder I was feeling sad because I was so far out of alignment of the truth of who I am, that of the possibility and the potential that we all are, but had been so like captivated by that negative committee in my head that it was the one running the mic. And that's where I kept my focus. And I kept going back to that because somehow in my head, because I had been told that, to be worth anything in the world, you needed to be a hard worker and you got to work hard to earn your keep. And, it's better done than perfect. You got to make it happen and all of that. And so I associated a lot of what I was attempting to achieve and often what I wasn't achieving. I was associating that with who I was. And I was so critical of my progress or lack thereof, mostly, that it was really caused that chatter to get so negative and caused my emotional state to be affected. And then it spiraled me down into feelings of a lot of sadness. And so when I began to recognize how important where I was placing my focus and how I was giving meaning to things and how I was giving understanding to things when they happened, I began to recognize how much I had been, selling myself this story of, oh, well, if you want to get better, you got to pick out the problems, you got to find the mistakes, you got to da 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 da. And that's not necessarily true, right? That's very much like somewhat of a school oriented
Mhm.
approach to teaching of like, let's find the problems, we'll fix the problems. And I'm not saying, you don't want to discover what went wrong, but I'm saying that where we place our focus, what we give our attention to is very important on how we feel. And when you start to notice that you're feeling sad or heavy emotions or struggling or resentful or whatever, what I want you to do is loop back into what you were just thinking about, because your thoughts create your emotions and affect your emotions, and your emotions will affect your behaviors, which then will impact your results. So if you're looking to change your results, we got to go back down the track a little bit and start to recognize, okay, well, what was I just focusing on? Was I focusing on the fact that no one's opting in for my free event? Or was I focusing on like what the copy sucks? And like, what were you focusing on? And so that's where you can bring in some of Dr. Joe's work that I love as well. And so what we can begin to do is, when you know your vision, and I think this is an important tip, is connect to your vision often. because what your vision is, what your movement is, what your purpose is, that's what your soul is calling you towards, right? And so connect to your vision and dive into that. Like, what's it going to make possible? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Like, really get the experience of it. It's so much so that you maybe even get goosebumps, right? And so when you can begin to live from that place and you can begin to move intentionally towards that, and we want that to be the focal point. And so that's a couple tips all in one, but living into your vision and having that focal point be top of mind, top of heart, so that you can begin to think thoughts that align with that vision and move you towards it, right? We always want to move towards something rather than away, because we want that pulling magnetic energy. And so when we can begin to choose intentional thoughts, and this is where yoga and neuroscience overlap, which is so cool, and you're going to love this too. When we can begin to choose intentional thoughts, focusing on the ways of being that we get from that future version, which we could go left field, but quantum physics tells us is a reality that's happening, and so we can tap into that version of ourselves now. So who is that you? Are they confident? Are they grounded? Are they happy? Are they focused? What are they? And begin to practice that now. So we create the clear intention for that and use the powerful words, I am grounded, right? Rather than up here in the ethers and all over the place, I'm grounded. Use your body to create that awareness, to create the experience, because your brain needs evidence, your brain needs experience. So that's where you can combine that internal state of being grounded. So this is where the yoga comes in, right? This is where you bring your body into it. So you're not up here in your mind all the time. You're in your body. You're feeling, living in your body. So you're using the tools of the practice, ideally first thing in the day, because it starts you off that way. It sets the tone, right? So use the feelings of grounding yourself, combining with that clear intention of I am grounded, or whatever it is, because what you're putting your focus on will expand. How you speak to yourself matters. And when you are living from that vision, then it's going to propel you forward on your warrior's journey. Did that make sense?
It did, and I appreciate you sharing that. Let's go a little deeper on some stuff. What would you say along this journey have been some of your biggest struggles? As far as an entrepreneur, not so much on a personal level. I mean, you can share some personal stuff too if you want, but what are some struggles you've had to overcome as you're I'm going to say, in your words, the vitality coaching or just helping people on their health journey? What are some lessons you've had to learn and overcome as far as from an entrepreneurial side, the ugly stuff?
What people want and what they need are different. It's easier to sell painkillers than it is to sell vitamins. And so when it comes to the work that I do, it's been challenging to begin to speak in a way that people value the work that I'm doing, because what you spoke to earlier of we all have a million one priorities, and making time for this stuff, it's nice, I'll do it later, but if we don't see it as a necessity and as a foundation, that's been a real challenge for me, because I love this and I just know that it's really good for people, and I know there's science and all of that, but people don't necessarily want to be, they do in a sense, they want to feel strong and healthy and balanced and all of that. But a lot of times it's, especially for entrepreneurs, they're really looking for the external results of the success of their business. So for me, I'd say one of my main struggles has been around messaging and beginning to learn how to speak in a way that makes sense to people, that they hear, that they value, that they want to invest in. Because a lot of the times it's, yeah, that's nice, I'll get to that later, right? When I have a breakdown or when I have a problem, because it's hard to sell prevention. So that's been, I'd say, the biggest challenge. And just speaking to people that are at a point of valuing their health so that they are ready to step in and make it a priority.
So what about, because in your industry, there's tons of different things, right? And you've got all these like MLM companies selling these vitamins and these programs and this and that. You've got the it used to be called Take Shape for Life. I think it's now Optiva, and you've got all these different things. And then, there's different vitamins, there's different this, there's different health. What are your, I'm not going to tell you too much to talk bad or, bash something else, but what's your thought on some of that stuff? Or does that align with what you're doing? Is that like different from what you do? Anything along those lines?
I take a holistic approach, and I think, there's certain things that we need for our body, for our mind, for our spirit. And so potentially everything has its place if it feels good and if it feels nourishing and supportive. And so, do you mean as far as a business model or as far as things that I feel like we need?
Either or, just in general. There's so much out there. There's so many health gurus, health
Hmm.
people. You know, I don't know how to say this where it's like kind of a lot of these, if we're going MLM, a lot of these business models, they take everybody and it's like, hey, you get all your friends to do this and do that, and then you're going to be making all this millions of dollars. But yet they're trying to sell a product. They're not trying to sell a result.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and this is going to sound horribly wrong, but it's kind of like somebody who's extremely heavy selling a weight loss program. It's like kind of
Hmm.
it's, it's if you're not living a certain lifestyle, it's hard to have other people follow that. Does that make sense?
Totally. That makes sense. Yeah. I don't, I really like authenticity, but I struggle when somebody says that this is the be all and the end all solution, and they don't have room for individualization in things. Like, this is going to cure all of your problems. As soon as you buy this, it's going to change everything for you. I don't like that. I don't like when people, it's kind of like a little bit snake oily, because it's like, it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. And having to invest hundreds and thousands of dollars just to get the result without a guarantee, that's a big ask for people. So I think potentially everything has its place, but at the same time, I'm sort of one who's always been a little bit resistant of, like, if you tell me what to do, I'm probably not going to do it unless it works for me. So, I mean, as far as I do, but I love essential oils. I love supplements. I think it's just when people are making false claims on stuff, or really big, uh, unsolicited, unfounded, I guess the word I'm looking for, unfounded claims, that's where I kind of get a bit skeptical. And, you know, I think some business models are really great, but if it's like, if there's only certain people that are making money and having it be successful, then it starts to get a bit scammy. And not that, all of the MLMs are like that, but I think, you just need to be really mindful about what you get involved in.
And it's fun. You talked about, the cure all for everything. And I don't think anything works 100% of the time for 100% of the people. We're all
Exactly.
genetically different. We all have different makeups. What works for me is not going to work for you. What works for you is not going to work for somebody else. And there are certain things that we know do work. Like, we know exercise and eating healthy. Everyone knows you need to eat better. Everyone knows you need to exercise. Everyone knows you need to have clarity of mind and all these different things. But that's not necessarily specifically a program for somebody, right? So it's tailoring. And I'm going to take an assumption here based on what we've talked about earlier. When you work with your clients, you probably customize what you're doing with them. You're probably not giving them.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on their needs and goals and their body and their energy level that day. It's very, very customized because we're all different, right? I like to say we're all each a divine puzzle. And so it's figuring out what we need on that specific day. And that's why some of the stuff, like the 5 a.m. club and all that, I'm a little bit like, I look at it from a concept of, okay, let's be consistent. Like, let's do the things that we know work. And, how can you weave that into your life? But how can you also make room for what feels good to you that day? So yeah, I agree with you. There
So
needs to be room for
So when
more.
you're working with a client, how do you determine that? What are some things you do, or how do you determine what their needs are, or is that more led by them? How, what would be like a typical process for you?
It's both. It's both. It's based on their vision because we're working with entrepreneurs. So we always want to begin with the end in mind. And so really, what do they see for themselves in their fullest expression of self? Like, what does their body look and feel like? How do they start their day? How do they feel? How do they sleep? What are they eating? What sort of thoughts are they thinking? So that's our guideline. That's what we begin to use as a path to get us there. And so how can we begin to create a ritual, routine, a practice, sessions around that? So we start there and we keep coming back to that, and we weave that into their day to day. And then in our sessions, that's where we begin to get a little bit more dialed in, a little more specific. And so we're always working from the goal of balance in the body, a balance of strength and flexibility. So we all have areas that we're tight. So that means the muscles are a bit short. We have muscles that are maybe a bit sleepy, not as active as they should. And so we want to play with that balance a little bit so that we can come back into strong posture. And that will help to, strengthen and tone your muscles, increase flexibility, bone density, release extra weight. All of those things come as a byproduct of the body being strong, being aligned, being energized. And so everything weaves together. And so that's where integrating both the elements of personal training. So we're including strength training, balance work, core, cardio, but then of course, the flexibility and the awareness and the breath of yoga.
Excellent. Now, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, do you have any tips or tricks for entrepreneurs who are starting out? Let's say they're going into your field. Let's say they're going into health, wellness, vitality, that kind of thing. Do you have any tips or tricks? Do you say these are things I think you absolutely need to think about or consider when you're on this journey? Because so many of us go into this blindsided. We don't know what we're expecting. We don't know, it could be something about taxes or anything. There's things that we don't think about. What advice or recommendation would you make for somebody who's just starting out? And it doesn't have to be in your field. It could be just as an entrepreneur in general.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been the biggest shift for me was to have one-on-one coaching. And that may not be feasible right out of the gates as far as from an investment perspective for someone, or it might be. But I'd say as soon as you can, have somebody that you can work with one-on-one so that they can have their eyes on your work and your business and help you to create a sustainable and profitable model for your business that aligns with your mission. So that would be one, because, I admittedly for many years, I was like the freebie collector and I was trying to weave it all together, smash it all together really. And it didn't go as well as it could have. So I would say that would be one. And the riches are in the niches, if you will. And I really, for a long time, because humans, we all need to be healthy. We want to be healthy. I can help humans, any human with a body. I can help you with the yoga, with the exercise. And so really being reluctant to get very specific, I think was something that held me back for quite some time. And so, because I know it can be daunting of like, well, why would I say I want to only help this like small group of people? And the thing is that, the analogy that made the most sense to me and hopefully will make sense and encourage your listeners and watchers to niche down a little bit more is you can throw a rock into the ocean and barely notice the impact of it, right? If you throw a tiny pebble into the ocean, you're not going to see any ripples. But if you throw a rock, a tiny pebble into a puddle, a small puddle, you're going to see the ripples. You're going to see it. And I was like, oh, is that why I should be speaking to a more specific puddle, not the whole ocean? And so I would say, note any resistance that you have about niching down or niching down, however you say it. In Canada, we say niche. And just see what you can do to follow your inner calling and your guidance to who you want to help, and see if you can get more and more specific. Because even within an industry as big and broad as health and wellness, I mean, there's a lot of different directions you can go. And so finding what feels good to you that would help you to be in a place of joy and fulfillment, but in a way that could really serve a very specific population. I think that's really helpful.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. So if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, or, possibly work with you, how could they find you?
Well, to do all of that, you can go to Megan Nolan.com. So Megan Nolan, .com. And that way we can connect. There's lots of great freebies on there to get you started. Or if you want to grab the book, you can go to thewarriorsjourneybook.com and you'll get the direct link to the book. And that's a really great point to start to explore a little bit, get a sense for what we've been speaking to in the episode. And then that also gives you some opportunity to do some little mini practices with me and dive a little bit deeper. So either of those places would be great.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time to jump on here with us. Is there anything else you feel you want to add or share with the audience before we kind of wrap things up?
Taking care of you is one of the most highest value things that you can and get to do. Your business, your clients, your community, your content, your email list. Do you see the word they all have in common? Yours. It's you, and your business relies on you. And when you're taking care of, the proverbial cup being full, then you're able to give from the overflow. You're able to give at the level and the energy that you really truly want to be showing up with, rather than getting in that go, 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 frantic, frazzled, worn out entrepreneur. Oh my God, what am I even doing? Blah, blah, blah. Making yourself and your health a priority, putting it first, checking it off the list, which again releases one of those long chemical names, dopamine, and gets you started. So doing those things first in the day, making it a high priority activity, actually has a massive ROI and helps you to take care of your number one asset, yourself, as well as your number one business asset. So yes, I would say that's what I would finish with.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on. This has been another episode of Habits of Influence. You can find us on all major podcast channels, as well as on YouTube and habitsofinfluence.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. We have a new episode every Wednesday. And thank you so much for joining us. Megan, thank you so much for being our guest today. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for being on.